Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on practical AI for data teams. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. We're going to be diving into one of the most transformative topics in the data world right now. AI obviously has been generating tremendous buzz across the industry for the past 18 months. Obviously, as data professionals trying to empower other parts of the business to use AI, have business cases around AI. But also, we want to kind of cut through the hype and focus on what really matters for data professionals today as far as using AI, leveraging AI in your day-to-day work. So we'll be exploring practical, actionable strategies for integrating AI into your data workflows and the real challenges that you'll face, as well as concrete steps that you can take to drive meaningful results for your data teams. It'll be a really interactive session. Just to start, my name is Jenny Hearn. I'm the chief of staff here. I'll be emceeing this conversation, but we want it to be really dynamic. We'll start with a lot of insights and perspective from our expert speakers. We will have plenty of time for your questions, so feel free to drop those in the Q&A tab throughout the session. We want it to be really valuable and relevant to the specific challenges that you're facing. But with no further ado, let me introduce today's speakers. With me today, we have Sean Knapp. Sean is the founder and CEO of Ascend.io. Sean brings an impressive track record of building and scaling data in intensive technologies. He was previously co-founder and CTO at Ooyala, where he led product and engineering. And before that, he was a tech lead at Google. So Sean really understands the operational realities of implementing AI in data pipelines and data processes at scale. And he brings that kind of builder's perspective to help us think through the practical challenges of making AI work in production environments. And we're also super excited to be joined today by Andrew Brest, who is the founder and CEO of Blue Badge Insights. Andrew is a veteran marketing intelligence expert who covers data analytics and AI, bringing both technical depth and market perspective to every conversation. He's literally written the report on data engineering tools, which you can access on GigaOm's website. We'll send it out as a follow-up resource. And as a seasoned technical author and speaker, Andrew really understands today's rapidly evolving AI landscape, especially in the context of enterprise like data infrastructure. Andrew brings that rare combination of hands-on technical knowledge and strategic market insight that will help us understand not just what's possible with AI, but what's really practical for data teams today. So together, Andrew and Sean are going to help navigate us through the strategic landscape, the tactical implementation challenges, and we're going to have a really great conversation around how to practically use AI. So great to have you both here. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for including me. And yes, this whole subject in many ways tracks things that have been both passions and pet peeves throughout my career. When it comes to data pipelines, when it comes to AI, I've had decades of, I don't know, skin in the game and mixed results using these things. It's really neat to see things maturing to a point that I didn't think I'd see, and even better just to be here and talk about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear from you today, Andrew. In all of our conversations so far, just that grounded reality I think you bring to these conversations is really valuable. And so speaking of like grounding in some reality, let's start with some data because I think we're all data people. So we've talked pretty extensively about what we call the data productivity crisis. We at Ascend have run this survey every year for 5 or so years, asking data teams how they're experiencing work, what kind of processes and tools they're prioritizing. And what we found every year is that data teams are at or above their work capacity. They have more and more demand from the business. Even as they're more and more productive, they still can't seem to get above that threshold of feeling like they're meeting the demands that the business has placed on them. But one thing that was different this year was that 46% of teams said that they were prioritizing productivity as one of their top 3 priorities in 2025. And this is a big difference from previous years. This team productivity is now 11% higher than any other category. It seems like there's this huge drive for teams to have greater productivity amongst their like data processes. And I think as we were considering like why this might be true, one thing that definitely stood out to us was the reality or perceived reality of how AI is impacting other roles. Um, we hear about software engineering where you have like GitHub Copilot or Cursor that's helping software engineers write and debug code up to 55% faster. There's marketing agents that can do all sorts of work for marketing teams. Support agents are resolving tickets for support teams, and on and on and on. But it feels like data teams are maybe left a little bit behind. We asked, where are you using AI today? The most use of AI was for that test automation at 47%. But most people, it seems like, aren't even really using this broadly, aren't really using AI broadly across their organization. So it seems like there's maybe a disconnect between what other teams are experiencing and what data teams are experiencing as AI helping them to get their work done. And perhaps that's driving this drive for greater productivity. What do you guys think about that? Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Andrew.
I was going to ask if I could interject some of that groundedness you attributed to me.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I got to say, I think these numbers are actually pretty good. I mean, we're not in single digits here. We're not even in small doubles, except for the that 11% in the middle. But I also think that, like, when you take, especially when you go to data, right? Most things in data are sort of the quintessential, bespoke, customized, um, highly just highly customized pieces of engineering. And of course, that's why everyone's feeling so overwhelmed by them, because as the demand to build more and more pieces of that technology comes out, it becomes kind of unsustainable. I would say that some of the numbers on your previous slide may be about kind of hitting arbitrary KPIs and doing it in an arbitrary way. For all I know, that software development number is based on lines of code, because we have to measure it somehow, right? You can't manage it if you can't measure it. So how do you measure it? I'm not saying that this is all fiction. I'm just saying that you can fudge things with a lot of what's on this slide. And I think when it comes to data, you can't fudge stuff, because either it's working and it's accurate or it's not. It's much more binary. And I mean, I do have an optimistic message here, which is that I think there's ways to get this right and for it to really help. But I have a feeling the audience pulled for the numbers on this slide may be much more I don't know, much more candid maybe than the other folks. And well, let me let Sean get words in edgewise before I say more.
Well, I think I agree. I think there's probably multiple things that are impacting this. One is I do think the availability of AI and agentic tools to data teams is more strained, and there's less penetration just from like you could go grab Cursor and try and get Cursor to do things with data with some MCP servers, but it's just kind of awkward and it's not really tuned for that like it is for software engineering. So I don't think we have verticalized tools that are pervasive yet. But I will say, I like 1,000% with you on this one, Andrew, is when you can't kind of fake it on the data side. And gosh, it was probably a couple of months ago. Was meeting up at one of our investor conferences and meeting with a bunch of heads of engineering for small and very, very large companies. And the general sentiment from a lot of the software engineering leaders was, crap, I don't know where all these stats are coming from. We are trying so hard to get our teams to hit those stats. And they're like, our CEO is out there saying things like, we're not hiring any more engineers. And hey, look at what these teams are doing. Why can't you guys get there? And so there certainly is this, I'd say, this sort of spread of, we hear a lot of results. And yes, I think a lot of it is you use AI to write your software, like your tests for your system, which are great and you should, but you're juicing your lines of code. But at the same time, it's people are presenting their best storytelling stats at the same time, and there's a bit of a mix there. And so I think it's really those three factors that are at play.
Yeah.
AI is often great for like mindless grunt work. And I especially when it comes to pipelines, I don't think it's mindless. It may feel like grunt work, but I don't think it's mindless.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very precise, and hallucinations more than 0% of the time are not okay. Sorry
Yeah.
to
Well,
interrupt.
no, I think it's great because I think there is a lot of like I would contend there is a fair bit of grunt work in AI pipelines, especially in like operating them, doing things that nobody. I think data teams oftentimes just hunt on grunt work, like, hey, we need to migrate off of this Informatica data pipeline. I can't tell you how many times a week I hear like we would love to move off of legacy X, but most of them just kind of punt because it is a ton of grunt work, and at the same time, if you get it wrong, it's the backbone of the business, and it has really like damaging impact. And so that's I think one of the catch-22s is there's this whole one of the things I heard was like the waterline changes, the ROI waterline changes, and so there's like this all of this just shit that data teams have been punting on because they don't want to deal with it. That if we can actually change the ROI equation and that waterline drops, you're going to start to see all of these things emerge above that waterline. And things like migrations and other things are just heavy grunt work that people have been deferring forever now become like very easy targets to take on.
So let's talk about that, because I think this is a really great segue to the first question, and I think the question that many people on this call want to know is like, where are data teams getting the most leverage today? If we have the cynical approach to like AI can't do anything for me, or AI can do everything for me, where's the healthy middle of what can AI actually help teams accomplish today?
It's good at generating SQL code. It's good at generating Python code to do things with data frames and data. It's very good at getting people off the blank page or helping them understand code that somebody else wrote. I think that's a fairly low-hanging piece of AI fruit. Wow, that's a crazy mixed metaphor, but I think it's good for that. Bridging that to stuff that's more precise it's not impossible, by the way, but it's tougher. So I'm interested in Sean's take on this.
Yeah, I mean, like we see, I think a couple of different. Oh, good, you do have that in there. I kind of group it into, the color coded sort of three sections here. As Andrew, as you were talking about, we definitely see that first section of what a lot of us kind of know and love is like the chat interface, Copilot-y thing of, I have a question. Go do this thing. Like I literally was watching our AI agent in a customer's environment where they had just had a couple of typos that were creating build errors. And you can click a single button and it goes, finds all occurrences of that string, goes and fixes them, reruns the build, runs the flow for you in the dev environment, and everything works. And so like there's sort of like that baseline of your little developer buddy that can help a bunch. Where I think that the next level gets to is oftentimes, frankly, the stuff that we just don't really get to. All right, like teams aren't doing a lot of documentation. They're not doing a lot of data quality tests. I literally saw an internal PR pull request fly through yesterday from one of our teams where they were playing with a new agent they had created. And the agent's whole mission was go look at all of the data components, profile the data, and then inject data quality tests as part of the real-time running of the pipeline to make sure that when this thing's running in dev and stage and production, these assumptions we're making about the data as it flows through continue to hold. And those are the kinds of things like, are you really going to get like a data analyst or an analytics engineer to, transform by transform in thousands of transforms, sit there, look at the profile of the data, and then modify the code to go write reasonable data quality checks? Probably not. So I think we get a bunch of stuff like that, which are what I call like semi-supervised. You can kind of supervise and they're low risk. Like if you totally blow up on the data quality test, if you have a good dev stage prod like CI/CD process, which, okay, maybe some people don't, but hopefully you do. If you have a good that, you're going to catch it, right? So like the amount of it's not AI running in production, so it's still pretty safe. The third level, I think, that gets really interesting, and this is where we were talking about this a bit before. I always want to be super transparent on this is frontier. It's not futuristic. So I want to delineate between frontier versus futuristic. Is we can do all the sci-fi. Oh, the agents are going to do these amazing things unsupervised, And I think if people are going to pitch a lot of that hype, I want to be pretty pragmatic and practical about like what do we see happening on the frontier today? And that's literally agents that are being invoked as part of automation systems. So, hey, when a data pipeline fails, as an example, do these things. Go look at the Git history, look at what's changed in Git from the last time it ran successfully to now. Go figure out who made the changes. Cross-reference that with the actual error. Does that make sense? If not, research deeper. Take all of that information, put it into a GitHub issue. Send a note in Slack or Teams. If you can find the person in Slack or Teams who made that pull request, tag them in it as well. And then go light up a PagerDuty incident that's linking to all the other pieces of information so that, within 120 to 180 seconds of something breaking, somebody's notified and they have an entire triage report where that human can come in the loop and actually do something really impactful. And the reason why I highlight that is that it kind of going back to Andrew, your comment on grunt work, like this is just like grunt work that it's so much nicer, especially when that stuff happens at 3 a.m. That at least when you drag your butt out of bed, you kind of have a whole readout of this is what I think is wrong and what we should do. And it gives you a good, jumpstart on fixing things. And so I think we're going to keep getting into.
Nobody aspires to be in that part of their career where they have to do all that stuff.
Yeah. And that's why I say
it's not romantic.
Yeah. And that's why I like to highlight this as a scenario, because this is frontier, but it's happening today. And we have these out in production built by our customers, building these and deploying whatever their nuances of these. And it's not magic. It's not rocket science. You can literally create these things in less than an hour. It's incredibly tractable. And that's why we get pretty excited about this. It's in the present today, and it's a practical thing you can do.
I'm not the one who invented this analogy by far, but sometimes AI is compared to a very eager and bright intern that has an incredible work ethic, and you could be in a position to just nicely exploit that intern and have them do all kinds of work that you don't want to do. AI serves that, and you don't even have to feel guilty about the exploitation. But just like with an intern, like if you don't put any investment in managing and mentoring that intern, right, it's not fair. You're not going to get good results, and you're setting them up for failure. And I do think that part of the analogy works for AI as well. You've got to give it guidance, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in more specificity. But speaking of specificity, for a CEO, or really for anybody, for Sean to get that concrete about specific issues and specific kind of checklist items and punch list items that come up, that's rare. So whatever, you can say shucks or not say anything, but it's important. And I think that shows through in your platform. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, I think that was a great segue, Andrew, of so what tools, technologies do need to be in place for effective AI? Because like you said, there needs to be context. There needs to be some other things that are key for your intern to be successful, for your AI agents to be successful. So let's talk about that. What does the AI need, and how can teams help the AI get those tools?
Shall I go first?
Sure.
So I think in general, and I was, while we were still in the virtual green room before we went on the air here, I was sharing some of this with you, that I just did a talk at a conference that involved a lot of live AI demos. And those are tricky because AI can sort of react one way on Tuesday and maybe not the same way on Wednesday. So it's tough to do those demos. And it's also tricky because sometimes you got to wait 15, 20 seconds for a response. And up on stage, that feels like it's 2 hours. But what I found, and what really my talk ended up focusing on, is that the more this was in the sphere of being able to do natural language queries against data and against BI models. And in that case, it was build the model to be as self-documenting as possible and with as much contextual, and in that case, linguistic information as possible, so that the range of things that the AI might output is narrowed to really what the domain should cover, with important kind of clues and details that the AI needs, so that it can come out with a really good spot on result. And also, by the way, give you a way to verify that the logic it used was sound. And so that was a specific stuff for a specific scenario, but I think it can be generalized, right? And my multi-year observation of Ascend is that it's always been based on, let's automate updating and fixing and healing stuff based on having enough information, because it's out there if you gather it. That's what metadata is, right? And updating pipelines is in effect a meta activity, right? You need meta information about the very specific things that are happening so that you can implement specific updates and fixes and do it accurately. And now, with that sort of general pontification, I will pass it off to Sean, who will ground it in much more concrete reality, I think.
But no, I mean, I think I probably don't have too much to add because I wholeheartedly agree with this. I think the collecting of metadata, it's everything, like code changes, runtime history, pipeline run in metadata. Like we see the ability to do that, whether you're trying to have a fully automated or an agentic system, really needs most of the same data. So there's a lot of sort of similarities there. What I'd say is, to bridge on top of that, if you want, I'd say just the pure like chat-based AI kind of experience, just a ton of context and metadata is probably sufficient. If you want to expand into the agentic world, which I would generally suggest crawl, walk, run, so start with chat and kind of move your way broader. There's I think two other pillars beyond the context that really matters. The second one is the ability to take action. And this is where we usually see the MCP servers, the Model Context Protocol servers, really take a front seat in the ability to talk to other systems. Sometimes you'll use MCP servers to get context into your model as well. But it really becomes this arm in which you can take action with the outside world. So we see that as a second really important pillar. Then the third one that I think is really important is triggers. When do you invoke an agent? And a lot of our mental model that's really evolved from the consumer, and I'd kind of call the prosumer or work-based model, is still with chat. So the trigger is just I send a message into a text box and it does something, or maybe I send a voice command. But when we're talking about automated systems, there's a whole world of triggers. And this is something that we've built into the platform, really to make sure that we could have a really powerful layer of automation, which is every event that goes flying by, whether it's this thing failed, this thing succeeded, this user did this action, everything is an eligible trigger for an agentic invocation. And so what, the example I gave before of, your sort of 3 a.m. triage agent that's going to go do a bunch of this work for you, it can be triggered off of pipeline failures. Or maybe you want something that just every night at this time gives you a summary of everything that's going on. Or maybe you want to trigger a different agent that every time a developer says, I'm ready for a pull request review, does the first pass at everything and says, actually, you've deviated from our style guidelines here. Here's a few recommended fixes before we send it to a human and burden them. And so it's really that combination of context, actions, and triggers that creates that whole agentic experience in our experience.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the context, all the metadata, you need a place to collect that. Actions, you need a way for agents to do things on behalf of your team, and triggers for AI to be able to do things. One of the things that you mentioned, Sean, that I think is worth touching on, maybe in relation to our next question is that MCP servers. Let's talk about like what cutting edge tools or technologies are worth exploring now. And can you dive in? Maybe MCP is less cutting edge than it used to be a couple months ago, but I think it might be new for many people. Can you share a little bit more about that? And what other like tools do you think are worth exploring today?
Yeah, Jenny, that's last week's news. This is AI. Oh,
Totally.
It's worth covering.
I'd say, well, cutting edge is also a very temporally relative term, because I don't know, I feel like there's this like, kind of following that same adoption curve. Everybody's juggling knives and then throwing them back to the next wave. But I think MCP servers are a really great, what I think a huge amount of credit to the Anthropic team for introducing this, which was it's a standard protocol that basically says some other web or API service has a completely standardized way, or a couple of standardized ways of defining how AI can interact with their system. And by doing that, it opens up this entire realm of AI can talk to everything. There's certain security nuances and implications around like, hey, how do you make sure that you can only do things that are safe in this access with MCP servers? But it is really powerful, and it opens up the entire agentic realm in ways that previously just were going to be very difficult to do. So I think that's a really important one. The other thing that I do think, I think it's really important for people to continue to explore and experiment with the latest and greatest models. They're growing and changing so fast that the thing that was frustrating, and maybe you got it to work, Andrew, kind of like your comment from before, like you got to go run it, whatever demo you have, you got to go run it 20 times over, because you don't really know exactly what's going to happen, and the demo gods may strike, and so you got to be prepared for all those scenarios. Correct. What we are finding is these models are getting so much smarter and so much more powerful that if we look at the different than Moore's law that doubles in computational capacity every 2 years, we're seeing it double every 3.4 months, which basically means over the course of 2 years, it's actually 133x, or put a different way, in 2 years' time, we're going to see the growth of AI computational capabilities that is roughly equivalent to the last 14 years of good old-fashioned computational capabilities in growth. So it's, I don't know, like think back to what the world was like when you had the iPhone 3 or 4 or whatever, and imagine that much change in the last 2 years, or in the next 2 years. And so I think that's why it's so important to continue to experiment, with the latest Gemini models, the latest, Anthropic models, the latest OpenAI models. Like, we keep seeing such great innovation here, that the thing that was frustrating last month is now a layup for the new wave.
I take a different approach there. I say I'm going to sleep. Wake me up when the model works. I don't want to try every single one unless I have some spare time, and then I'll put it into that, and I'll say, okay, let me see how this works now. But the models themselves, the portfolio of models is becoming overwhelming to the point where I think asking the customer to pick one is ridiculous. That in and of itself should have some kind of a heuristic around it. And I think the industry is going to have to catch up with that. You're already on to the next question. I just wanted to whine about one thing with respect to MCP. Actually, the whining, it comes before MCP. MCP cured the thing I'm whining about. But we were in this insane period for a year or more where suddenly everybody was talking about data as if it lived in PDFs, and that was other document formats, and that was the only data that was worthwhile, and that somehow your structured tabular relational database, I mean, once again, relational databases were sort of deprecated in people's minds, which is all kinds of ridiculous. And MCP basically said, I'm going to set up a protocol to make all these things discoverable. And lo and behold, once the agents have been given the agency to do that and see that data, well, suddenly all kinds of wisdom comes in, and the models aren't just doing neat like party tricks, they're actually doing useful stuff. End of rant, but I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's exciting. It's exciting what I think the thing with MCP that is really innovative is the limitation to what AI can do is sort of human innovation, you know, like uh, whatever you dream of giving this AI access to be able to accomplish, um, you just need to give it access to the right tool, the right trigger, the right context, like you were saying, Sean, in order for it to be able to work. So yeah. Any other thoughts or question or things you would want teams to consider, Andrew, on cutting edge technologies that are worth exploring? Obviously, like you said, no one's got time to explore all of them. So how do you go about picking what you're going to look at on a
Right. And
daily
going back to
basis?
that slide with a bunch of numbers that were under 50 that we were feeling a little bashful about, I think that comes from the school of hard knocks, right? We love our three-letter acronyms. Like one of them is CLM, career limiting move, which is a euphemism for don't trust the technology so much that it screws up, delivers a bad result, and you suffer for it career-wise. So I think data people are just real careful because they have authority, but they have responsibility, and it's their hide if something really doesn't go well. So they're going to be super, super conservative, as they should be, to make sure something works really well before they bring it into their work. But on the flip side, that can engender a kind of attitude that says this stuff is all hype and I'm not going to touch it at all. And that's not a good idea either. I've found most technology trends are one or the other, typically based on kind of what phase we are in terms of their introduction. Everything's all cool demos at the beginning, and it's fairly easy to be cynical and not pay attention to it. And then things get, like it gets boring, and that's when it starts working really well. AI is very different. Like it's this weird hybrid of hype and genuine utility. And so the best strategy, I think, is to kind of triage and look for the stuff that has substance and do invest your time there, because there's a decent amount of it. And just because there's a lot of noise does not mean that there's zero signal. There's both. And that's hard. I like as an industry analyst, that's hard. My, my patterns and my paradigms of, okay, this is how I'm going to look at this. Like, they don't work with this. I've had to create new ones, and I have to get used to modifying them and creating other new ones later, because I feel like I'm a wise person. I have wisdom, but you need to be humble before this, because it's not just theme and variation on what we've had before in the tech world.
Makes a lot of sense. Let's pivot a little bit because both of you have so much experience in, understanding how teams work, understanding, how technology adoption works. I'm sure there are general things about technology adoption that you can speak to about common pitfalls that can occur, but I think there are some that are specific to AI. So I'd love to hear, maybe, Andrew, we can start with you for this one. What are some common pitfalls teams encounter as they're going on this like AI adoption journey? And what practices can teams like adopt to help avoid those?
So this is actually a place, ironically, where old patterns do apply, and where people, I think, maybe have thought that they don't have to, that they don't really need to kind of make accommodations for them anymore, but they do. That is, come up with scenarios. Be very specific about your scenarios. Be very specific about your requirements. Get those articulated well. And if you do that and then try and apply AI to your problem, I think you're going to end up with a much better result than saying AI is kind of magical. Here's my problem space. I'm just going to let the AI have at it. And, chips will fall where they may, again, in the Olympics of mixed metaphors. Um, And then what happens is typically the results are pretty bad, and it leads to a kind of discouraging kind of experience and set of expectations that then you get overly cynical and overly pessimistic about the power of AI. So it's like I said with the intern, like you gotta make an investment. You gotta give that intern some mentoring. You've got to train it. You've got to be there to give it some support. And if you do that, the return on that investment's going to be pretty high. So it's again, whether it's building a semantic model with lots of good semantics in it to help the model, or, in the case of data pipelines, making sure to collect as much metadata as you can so that the understanding the model has of your data estate and your pipeline and the lineage and the provenance and how things should map properly, that it has, the right sense, help it develop instinct in a way. I know that seems weird to attribute to software or machines, but it makes sense. Some empathy actually works with AI. I have found, as bizarre a thing as that is to say.
Amazing. Sean, what about you?
Um, yeah, I think to try and find an angle that's additive to obviously the great stuff Andrew's already provided. I would say to play Goldilocks a little bit on this one. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Is on one, I would avoid the YOLO inducing CLM strategy. To pull in a couple of those at the same time. I do strongly recommend folks. You should embrace it. You should get in there. You should learn and understand how it works, because it is going to be like fundamentally transforming. The caveat is, don't do anything that's going to be so career limiting that it one, limits your ability to be effective. But honestly, joking aside, two, you're trying to build advocacy. And these things are like these really awkward superpowers where we're still trying to figure out how to make them work. And so, go into it for assuming 9 out of 10 things aren't going to quite work the way you want to, but you're trying to build intuition and understanding for how to marshal this incredible new power. And you're trying to ultimately also bring others on the journey with you. And so building that intuition for where does it work really well today? Where is it likely to work well in the future? And then even broadcasting and socializing that across your teams. We've talked about AI hackathons where we frankly stack the lineup with things we know AI does really well at, because then you're not trying to convince people that AI is going to be good at everything. It's very easy to find scenarios where AI falls flat on its face. Like, that's not the challenge, but the challenge is oftentimes stack it so that people can get that, like, wow, like, how the hell did it just do that? So they get that little aha moment, because that will keep them hungry and excited and interested in what will be an increasingly frequent occurrence of a success and a win. But once you get that, and it does that thing that almost feels magical, like, then you're kind of hooked. And so that's where I think the pitfall there is, don't push people so far to the extreme that you alienate them. And then they're like, like, call me in 2 years kind of thing, because you'll miss out on 133x growth. But at the same time, don't wait so much. And so find that moderated middle.
Cool.
AI is bright and it's efficient, but it's not clairvoyant. And if it looks clairvoyant, that's probably an illusion that the demo or the scenario was stacked to get to. And I will freely admit my demos were based on, let me try a whole bunch of things and see what is largely repeatable and can be replicated, because I don't want my audience to like witness a whole bunch of failures. So when you're blown away by a demo, realize it probably took some work to get to that demo. There's nothing wrong with that. Just realize that that's in the background. That's part of the context. And I don't know. Then when you go and try it on yourself, and if you have results that are less impressive, don't get discouraged, because that's part of the experience, and it's the part that usually in demos you don't get to see.
That's so true. There's all this experience that those who are at the forefront of AI have behind them, and like, we need to generate that ourselves by trying things and exploring, figuring out what works. and doesn't work, and not necessarily comparing ourselves to the people that are at the forefront, but learning from that and figuring out how to get there ourselves. I think that makes
Yep.
a lot of sense. Last
Yep.
question before our audience Q&A. Just a reminder that Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. You can toss some questions in there for Sean and Andrew. But last question before that, what should teams look at as they're evaluating AI-powered tools? What are the key things that they should be looking for when they're evaluating agentic or AI tools? Sean, let's start with you.
Yeah, start with Sean, because I have a great point to make, but it'll be a better point.
You should only
brought
look
in
at
as
tools.
ancillary.
Okay, great. I was gonna say you should only look at tools that start with the letter A.
Yeah.
The at least have two options. No, honestly, I think when you're looking at AI powered tools, I do think it's really important. And I'll try not. I don't know where Andrew's going to go with these questions, but I'll try not to steal some of it.
You won't. You'll be fine.
Okay, great. Context matters. Tools that are just a classic old school tool where the AI wave hit and the team decided, hey, we're going to take AI and bolt it on top. That makes it hard. It's really hard to make those tools work the same way that versus an AI native platform that was really designed for that modern era. Just as we've talked about cloud first technologies, there are going to be AI first technologies. And I think that matters a lot. Why that matters? You generally find that they have access to way more context because they are collecting way more context. They can do far more things, take far more actions. They tend to be more open, where agents really perform very, very well. And then I'd say the second piece that really matters, and again, to kind of Goldilocks it a little bit here, like you want a platform that has a lot of out of the box stuff that can help you hit the ground running super fast. It shouldn't be magical. It should be like neat, and it should be delightful, but it shouldn't be unexplainable. And I think the reason why that matters is finding AI tools and platforms that have great default experiences that then, as you go through your maturity curve, that you customize and modify and extend, that becomes really critical. Otherwise, you'll go on a journey with a tool and a platform, and it will accelerate your growth tremendously, but then you'll end up hitting the limits of what it can actually do. So finding that balance with an amazing default out-of-the-box experience that you can then customize is really key.
And it's going to make the user feel like they're getting traction. It's going to be, and I don't mean that would be an illusion. It's true. And it's gonna usher them towards a more iterative experience, and one where I don't know where the satisfaction is more abundant than the frustration, because it's real easy to have the reverse. The point I was going to make, what should teams look for? First of all, I'll reiterate what Sean said, but I'll maybe say it a little differently. Like platforms that are kind of look for pain points and solving them, those are the good platforms, because obviously that's what you want it to do. You don't want just some general kind of whiz bang approach. You want a tool that says, okay, we know that people are really hitting rough spots in this particular domain, and we're going to focus on that. And as Sean was saying, kind of make it so that the default experience gets you there pretty quickly without there having to be a lot of steps, and without the user having really to have to put a lot of faith into the tool to see those results. Because again, that builds trust and that builds encouragement early on. One thing I'm super nervous about for this industry is, and I really mean like the tech industry overall, is that they're so enamored and blown away by the potential of agentic computing that they're just not thinking of the flip side around governance and around setting agents up to in an environment where they operate safely. You wouldn't just give blind trust to humans to do all the things we talk about agents doing. So we really need to have governance in place. If we're going to talk about agents as if they're members of the team, and we've heard some big tech company CEOs do exactly that, well, then the onboarding and the security and the role-based access controls and defining permissions and privileges like that, that's got to be in there too. I see almost no focus on that industry-wide. I've even raised my hand and asked the question, and I've been given rather glib answers. No, like, this is a party and nobody wants a party pooper, but the party will fail on its own if there's some horrible outcome, because then everybody's going to distrust it. So we have to be careful going on. What I like about what Ascend does, first of all, I was kind of telling you again before we started, it's like you anticipated that AI would be able to do this even before it could, when we were relying much more on just conventional, it's funny to say conventional, but conventional machine learning to do some of these things, right? You've kind of set up a harness and a paradigm and an environment to say, okay, this is the range of things that break in pipelines. If we define that well, then we can use AI to fix them without the humans having to do so much of it. And so I think you're in a well-bounded domain where there's rules of engagement and protocol. And I'm not worried for you in this question of governance because of that. I just think that if we're asking the question broadly, customers should look for tools that also take into account the Spider-Man thing, right? With great power comes great responsibility, right? And look at both of those, not just one.
Yeah. Andrew, it's
Agreed.
great. Yeah, I love the focus on governance there. Sean, I really liked both the get a lot of value right away, but also make sure that you have the space to customize and have those things grow with your team. We are over time, so we won't get to audience questions today, but it's a really great conversation. So I really appreciate both of your time and all of your time who have joined us today. You can read Andrew's analysis on data pipeline tools at this QR code, which we'll send in a follow-up email later today. Or you can scan this QR code to connect with the Ascend team and learn more about our agentic data engineering platform. Thank you both, Andrew and Sean, for your time. Thank you, all of you, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. See you later.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, all.